player. And then she goes, well, how do the teams get picked? And I go, well, I'm the captain. I pick the next best person. And then you alternate back and forth until you fill your team. And she goes, well, are there kids that don't ever get picked? And I'm like, yeah, of course. There's kids that aren't any good. You don't pick those kids. And she goes, well, if you're as good as you say you are, you should pick that kid first, because if you can win with those kids, then you're really good. And I was like, oh, I think I'll accept that challenge. And the next day I remember going to school and I remember doing that and selecting that kid. And I'll never forget watching that reaction of that young boy at the time and seeing how much joy he had. And I was oblivious to it before. I didn't realize the power that an individual had to just touch somebody's life in a meaningful way. When you saw them, when you acknowledged them, when you brought them into your world and brought them into your circle and you accepted them. And that for me was a seed that was planted that has motivated me and has been a guiding force behind a lot of the things that I do in my life now, trying to serve others and trying to find ways to be passionate about seeing people that maybe don't get the recognition that they deserve. So both my mom and dad played a very important role in different ways in helping me be the man that I am today.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. Tristan, love to get your thoughts. Anyone early on in your life that impacted you similar to Ryan?
His name is Bill Lighton. I worked on Wall Street immediately after college. I hated it. I was terrible at it, but that's beside the point. When I was about 20 years old, he called me into his office. He was a black managing director at Lehman Brothers, probably one of the most senior folks there. Called me in his office. He said, Tristan, I figured out life. Do you want to hear it? And I said, absolutely. I sat down. He said, Tristan, one thing I want you to keep in mind, and this has served me really well, is, think about living life in this way. You want to spend the first third of your life learning, the second third earning, and the last third returning, right? Now, here's a guy who, black senior managing director at Lehman Brothers, very well respected. He left Yale when he was like 20 years old. When he was 40, right, he left Lehman Brothers. And he spent, at least up until this point now, from the last time I connected with him, dedicating his life not only to doing more on the investment side, but philanthropic efforts, right? And that had such a profound impact on me. It was simple, right? And I'm a kid from the hood. It was like, hey, I just want to get as wealthy as possible, as quickly as possible, right? But it was the foil that I needed to let me know that there was maybe another way, right? So how do I kind of learn? At that point, I was 20. How do I shorten my earnings so I can maximize the returning thing? And as I kind of talk to my team about this stuff all the time, our responsibility on returning has been pretty paramount. And I'll never forget that conversation. It has stuck with me ever since.
Well, the interesting thing, though, just seeing your career trajectory and all the things you've done, I feel like both of you very early on started effort around returning like way earlier than most people. I mean, starting Code 2040, you did that super early on in your career. Ryan, with your foundation, you did that while you were in the league. So was there something else, another catalyst that either of you experienced where it's like, though I am so overwhelmed with starting this company or so overwhelmed with being in the NFL, winning a Super Bowl, that like I'm gonna carve out some time to actually not only to give back, like not write a check, but you actually are creating platforms and systems to impact others.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to start. For me, I just care about consistency. As I talked about those three themes that I cared about, I mean, I've cared about them for a very, very long period of time. And I said I'm going to dedicate my life to being, close to the nucleus of those emerging themes. Look, I mean, I got out to Silicon Valley when I was 24 and felt it was way too late. I had no idea about what Silicon Valley was. My entire path was Wall Street. It was the only thing that I knew. I wanted to get rich. It was the only opportunity. I wasn't an athlete as good as Ryan was. I tried my best, but I was also pretty good at math and recognized that the numbers weren't going to work out in my favor. So for me, it felt like Wall Street was the only way. And I had such a blessing to have that opportunity to give it a try. But it didn't work. And that really facilitated my move out to Silicon Valley when I was 24 and realized like, wow, how did I not know that this place existed? There were folks participating in this new innovation economy, getting very, very wealthy at a very young age, very quickly. And I said, you know, a part of my responsibility is let people know that they shouldn't make the same mistake that I did as late as I did. So how can we actually engage these folks who are capable, willing, have cultural influence, and have a point of view to help impact what the next 20 plus years of this new innovation economy could look like? So I felt it was a bit of my responsibility. And to that learn, earn, return thing, I felt, wow, you know, this is sitting me and staring me right in the face. You know, while I kind of respected the, you know, third, I felt that there was a way to just get at it quicker. And it was right there. And it was ultimately my responsibility.
That's awesome. Can you talk a little bit more about Code 2040, what exactly it is,
Sure.
and maybe some of the success stories that were able to come out of it?
Of course. So the goal of Code 2040 is really to activate, connect, and mobilize the largest racial equity community in technology. You know, it started, it was 10 years ago now. Again, really with a more selfish goal to ensure that people don't make the same mistakes that I did. So we started with what we're most well known for, our Fellows program, right? So you know, the goal of the Fellows program is to get the highest performing Black, Latino engineering undergraduates internships out in the Valley, right? At Silicon Valley startups or technology company. And then we'll provide them with all the tools they need to be incredibly successful. Media training, fireside one-on-one chats with tech luminaries, interview bias training, right? You'd be surprised how much interview bias there is, right? And over that period of time, our Fellows program has a 90+% full-time offer rate, and it works. We've graduated, I think at last count, 600 folks through the program who are now in industry changing things. You know, one success story, you know, we got to the point where we were having over 100 fellows each summer, but our very first fellows class, we had 5. There's one gentleman in there, his name is Chaz Sims. Chaz is a computer science MIT grad. We got him in a startup. Turns out, I think last summer, Chaz raised $50 million from Tiger for his startup. And I'm so proud of him. Chaz is a person, and he went to MIT, had a wonderful GPA, computer science, and Silicon Valley couldn't find him. Now, the real benefit of Code 2040 is not to only go to the MITs. I mean, we find wonderfully capable folks at University of Maryland, Baltimore County, Stony Brook University, where I went, and also MIT, right? So we showed that Silicon Valley was not getting the best and brightest, full stop. And Code 2040 really helped augment that. And now it's grown into something much larger, but I'm very, very proud of what it's become.
Yeah, it's awesome. Welcome back, Ryan.
I just wanted to give Tristan the whole stage. You know, I want to make sure everybody got a chance to listen to his story and his passion. I'll piggyback off of the question though, just what you said before technology took me down. But nonetheless, you know, when I think about the way that I was raised and for me, the reason that giving back and serving others has always been integrated into my life is because of my faith and my belief in my Savior Jesus Christ has helped give me guidance in all the things that I do. And so I've always tried to implement a lot of the philosophies that I've learned through Christianity and through reading the Word. And to whom much is given, much is required. And so we built our foundation and a lot of the curriculum that we built around serving young teenagers and helping them and equipping them to understand how to embrace the power of giving, because I've always felt that the more that you can give, the more that you're going to receive, whether that's in business, whether that's in your relationships, whatever that's in, your ability to be selfless first and then find ways to help others will always come back to you in some important way. And so with our organization, we actually start with a very simple question. When's the last time you asked a family member or friend, how can I help you? And then build a curriculum on trying to teach young minds on how to implement that into their daily life. And it is a very simple question. And even that question, I have to challenge myself. How often am I asking that question to the people that are closest to me, my wife and my son and my mother and father and others, and my close circle of friends? Am I really doing what I can to serve them? Because if we can help create a better home creates a better community creates a better country. And so Those are a lot of the things that I think we try to spend our time working on, and that's played out in a lot of the things we do from a business standpoint as well.
It's amazing. Are there any tangible like stories or anything that came out of your foundation over the years that are worth kind of highlighting? I mean, I love the idea. You're almost like you're creating like a factory of legacy builders by giving the mindset around just like, how can I help you? How can I help you? Just having that sort of mindset, which is amazing.
Yeah, when I think about now going into 16 years, we now have had students that have gone through college and that have graduated and that have come back. We actually just brought one of our former students who's joined our board as a foundation, started her own business, and now has had a successful career and has joined our board. But when you ask that question, I think one of the moments that comes to mind, I'll never forget that part of the program is we take our students to go serve for about 10 days, typically in a third world country. We have stayed in the States and have served between their junior and senior year. But one particular time we went to the Dominican Republic, and we spent 10 days serving the community in the Dominican, where individuals were living basically on dirt, and we had to rebuild homes, we had to rebuild parks, we had to rebuild a lot of the structures within that community. And the entire time we're doing that, Kobie, the students are out there working, and from sun up to sundown all day long. We use long days. The community would be out there working alongside us. You had kids and men and women without shoes, with maybe just shorts on and no shirt, trying to pick up our equipment and work with us. And it blew our students' mind that the individuals in the community took so much pride in their community that they were going to do what they could to also help and contribute to the way that we were serving them. The very last day, we're getting ready to leave, and we're now celebrating all this amazing work we've done and rebuilding the structures, rebuilding parks, and we're there, and the whole community comes out to show us love. And they come out and they're hugging us as we're getting ready to say goodbye. Tears are being shed. And then all of a sudden, one of our students looks down and realizes that none of the kids that are there have any shoes on, that they've been running around all day and don't have any shoes on. And she takes her shoes off, and then takes like her jacket that she had on, takes it off, and starts giving literally the clothes off her back to the other kids. And then another kid sees her do that, and they do that. And then another kid, and then we do it. And all of a sudden, all of us basically go home with just our shorts and shirts on. We gave away everything, and it was such a powerful moment because it wasn't something that we asked our students to do, that all of a sudden they felt compelled in their heart and their spirit and their mind to say, I see somebody in need. I see somebody that needs something that I have the capability of delivering, and I don't need it, and I know they do, and I want to share that with them. And man, I cried. It gives me chills just thinking about that moment. And our students still talk about that moment often when I see the alumni from that particular group. So that was really powerful.
Wow, I just get chills thinking about that. I can only imagine being in that situation, and just the impact that your work is doing is clearly evident and amazing. Maybe switching gears a little bit, Tristan, I want to talk a little bit about just the journey of being a founder, and particularly with regards to you starting Walker & Co. and choosing to start a company that serves your community. And even fast forwarding now, as you're looking to support and back founders that are also serving their community. Just talk about that dynamic of building Walker, struggles and maybe dynamics that you had to face trying to build a platform like this to the masses, so everyone kind of hears that overall journey.
Yeah, I mean, I have a fundamental belief that serving this community, I think I said it a little earlier, is the greatest economic opportunity of my lifetime. Full stop. And transparently, it took me some time to get there. When I was thinking about starting a company, I was an entrepreneur in residence. I had the great fortune to do that for some time. And I found myself trying to come up with ideas that would make other folks proud of the idea I came up with, as opposed to thinking about the thing that I felt uniquely positioned to do. And when I really thought about it, and this is a principle that I carry with me today, nirvana is really putting yourself in a position where you can leverage your lived experience to do something that makes you uniquely positioned to do that thing. And Bevel and Walker and Company was a fight for me, because I was like, do I want to be the black dude making things for black folks, right? Which felt like the obvious step. And ultimately, I'm embarrassed by that fact, because I can't see myself doing anything else now, right? And I think, this is 2013. We're in a position now where I think we have that choice to do what we want to do. And look, I think I've earned a bit of my keep to be able to, say that not only with confidence, but really feel that it is the opportunity. So I did it. And it was something that I wasn't seeing other folks do. I felt that it was as close to an arbitrage opportunity as I could ever see. Now, naturally, Silicon Valley at the time wasn't so motivated by the initial pitch. And look, I had to recognize that it wasn't necessarily the fact that it was a bad idea. I think it was because the folks that had the money could not have the lived experience to make it make sense for them. So let me just give you a very quick example. And I've shared this before. My very first pitch deck, I had a slide that had Proactive on one side of the slide and had Bevel on the other side of the slide. I said Proactive is this $1 billion revenue company that helps eliminate acne. Bevel's going to be that company that helps eliminate razor bumps, that sort of thing. And I had someone on the other side of the table, a woman of color, by the way. So I'm not even going to single out like white men. A woman of color looked at me and said, Tristan, I'm not sure solving issues related to razor bumps will have as profound an impact as solving issues related to acne. And at some point I was like, I get it. I was just thinking in my head. But then I just realized that all that person had to do before they said that comment was to get on the phone to 10 black people, and 8 of them, literally quantitative, 8 of them would have said this is awful. Let's assume that you don't know black people, which is the problem in and of itself. Get on the phone with 10 non-black people, at least 4 of them would have said the same thing. So that opinion was shared purely catalyzed by laziness. It was not founded on any fact other than what that person wanted me to hear. And frankly, that's all I needed to hear, to know that I was on to something pretty interesting. And it was the first time in my life, I should say this, I've been very fortunate, and I've had this compounded privilege with all the experiences that I've had. And it was the first time in my life that I was hearing way more no's than yeses. And I had to recognize that there was a reason for that. And there was an opportunity in my hearing those no's, and I had to build the courage to get after it. And I did. And fortunately it worked.
Yeah. And again, testament to you to be that founder that can go through and plow through all those no's to find those yeses, those folks that actually support and believe and want to see Walker & Co. exist. And I think part of the issue where black founders run into trouble right now is that when we work on ideas that are disproportionately serving our community, where check writers who may not look like us don't see that as a relatable use case, they're not able to very quickly just process all the data, all the information around like, that's brilliant, I want to see more. There's doubt. There's not the emotion. There's not a connection around like, why should I support this? Why should I go on this journey? And that's one where it's tougher for black founders to go through and battle through that dynamic around raising capital. And
ultimately, I had to stop caring. Ryan got it, right? Folks like you got it. You know what I mean? And again, like naturally, this is also said with a ton of privilege that I had, right? So I respect that fact. But I had to stop giving a crap. Like, I just had to, because ultimately I was going to be in prison, and I was unwilling to allow for that to happen to myself.
Yeah, and I will say, just piggybacking off of what Tristan said in terms of getting it, it was more about who he was, right? And the way that he presented himself. And even to this day, he talks about you're still engaged. Well, I'm always going to be engaged with people that live their authentic truth. And live it with conviction and speak with experience and knowledge behind that to back up that conviction. And so to what Tristan said too is, well, black, white, green, or yellow, there's a lot of investors that are just lazy too, right? They just don't do the homework at times. So that's part of the issue as well. Again, not that I did a lot of the homework, but it was spending more time with him and getting to know him. And again, that's why I can call him a friend. Kobie, the same way. It's how we carry yourself, how you carry yourself as an individual. It's a character that shines through the most.
Yeah. I'd like to, Ryan, talk a little bit about how I've seen you work so much around giving back and helping, supporting so many of the athletes, whether they have transitioned off the field into the next chapter of their life, or they're currently in their respective sport, where you've been able to bring them to Silicon Valley, bring them to this whole ecosystem that now is your day-to-day, in efforts to allow them to get access to the innovation economy and open up the next chapter. Like, why did you choose to do that? and also talk about some of the impact you're able to create that I was able to see firsthand.
Yeah, I'm a glutton for punishment, I guess, in a certain extent. When you think about, it sounds easy and it sounds cool and it sounds sexy, working with athletes and helping them and being around them and, supporting them and helping them with investments and helping them work with companies. And it's hard. It's a challenge. And athletes and influencers are individuals that are uniquely different and separated from the rest of us because they're wired different and their worlds are different. And so with that comes with hurdles and challenges and obstacles that can make it really hard to be successful at managing a lot of athletes at scale or influencers. That said, it's the same thing that Tristan recognized. I see a problem. There's a problem that is pulling at my heart and at my spirit and at my soul. And I am the person that's uniquely positioned out of the 7 billion people on the planet that can maybe address this problem. I'm going to take a chance at that. I'm going to go after it. Despite all those obstacles and challenges, I'm going to go ahead and try to attempt to do that. And being in a locker room, it was crazy to me how often one of my teammates would come to me and they go, "Oh, Nece, like you invest, you look at tech, your family's been in it for over a decade. Like, what do you think about this investment that I'm putting money into for this diaper delivery service in Lincoln, Nebraska?" You're like, probably not the one you want to lean into. And it was just frustrating to see a lot of men and women that I knew put a lot of money into things that had very low probability of success. And oftentimes it wasn't their fault. I mean, we all know, if you consider on any, savvy founder, and they can sell the crap out of some things. And so they can make it sound good. And I just realized I wanted to find a way to do it better. And so we created Next Play on a simple mission. How do we give our community the ability to have a seat at the table? What does that seat mean? Oftentimes people think naturally putting dollars to work and investing. It's not just a seat at the table to do that, though we do that with the best venture funds in the country. Shout out to Upfront. But we also had the opportunity to invest in great companies and great founders. That's the seat at the table. But it's a seat at the table to engage, to learn, to educate, to network, to build relationships. Because as Tristan said, there weren't a lot of individuals like him in the communities that he was in. But when he's a light. And when other young founders and other men and women of color see Tristan and what he's accomplished, that gives people hope. It's the same thing that I saw when I saw Jerry Rice. And so the more that we can do that with our community of investors and give them access to see these opportunities, I feel like it's going to create even more opportunities for others to come behind us, to continue to grow, to continue to allocate to this asset class that is pretty meaningful and can generate meaningful returns when you do it the right way. So time and time again, it's oftentimes saying no and trying to tell the athletes and others they don't need to try to win the lotto again. You should probably run from that investment that your sister's cousin's mother, uncle wants you to be a part of. But there are opportunities where you can really win and lean in and if the right people are in the huddle to make plays. So man, I'm very fortunate and privileged to be in the seat that I'm in, to be a good steward of capital and to be able to work with the community of individuals that I work with. And I love it. I'm thankful every day I get to wake up to go after it.
you talk a little bit about outside of the platforms you both have created by which you can create relationships with folks in efforts to give back? I'm sure you guys have plenty of people that reach out in efforts for mentorship or advice. How do you manage that you and any advice for folks that are trying to seek out a mentor like yourselves in a way where you can actually just have the chance and have the opportunity to, whether it's gain 15 minutes of your time or it could be like a full-on relationship. So just that overall evolving like mentor-mentee sort of process. I'd love to hear your quick 2 minutes about it, because we have a question from the audience around that theme.
Sure. I mean, I'm happy to start. I always have such a fraught. Well, actually, I'm going to say something pretty controversial. I just hate the word mentors, mentorship, mentees, and all that stuff, because it's very patriarchal or hierarchical, and doesn't provide room for folks to potentially be mentored by folks who are younger than they. And I think that's important, right? Because the same folks that I said were like mentors of mine, like 15 years ago, I don't speak to them anymore, right? So I've taken a little bit different of an approach where it's like, just be around people who share your values. And I mean that like with precision, like write them down, define what they are.
That's right.
And by doing that, you realize a couple of things. Number one, you can make time. Well, first of all, you get rid of a lot of the churn in your life, right? Because ultimately, why are you kind of around people who don't share your values, right? So once you actually take stock of what they are, there's a lot less energy expended for things that you shouldn't be doing. And then you find a hell of a lot more time to be with people who do. So the first thing I would say for anybody that they're seeking those mentors, quote unquote, is understand why, understand who that person is, and understand if that person shares your values or not, because you could also be wasting time, you know? And then secondly, what the values allows for me to do is to learn from people who are younger than me, right? It kind of widens the aperture quite a bit, right? So I have a lot of colleagues in my company who are junior at the company that I get to learn from every day because, we share those values. So that mentor-mentee relationship is two-way, right? And there's a kind of pull and a tug that makes it make sense. That's how it's worked for me. But I really have people try to understand what they mean by mentorship, because it all too often is more transactional than it should be.
Yeah, I would piggyback off of that last word, that I try to eliminate it being transactional. And I always come back to, how we all, when we were growing up and you played on the basketball court, if you pass the ball to somebody, you want to hope that they pass the ball back to you. And so the ability to have a conversation with somebody, I don't know if it was Martin or Rodney said, I'll take the first call. I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to hear and listen to what you're thinking about or need advice on. But it's also to be able to maintain and be able to keep you in the circle and the community, and you got to be able to pass the ball back as well. And I don't care if you're young or old, but I'm a curious person. I want to constantly learn. I want to constantly understand what's happening in the world. And I think it's important for me to learn that and hear that from all different perspectives. And so the ability for individuals that come into my life to continue to pass the ball back, all of a sudden that builds a relationship. And now all of a sudden you can get deeper with those individuals. And so sometimes it can be transactional and I quickly move on and realize where that is and then move forward. But it's those individuals that really want to go beyond that you can start to build around the philosophy that I believe in terms of iron sharpens iron.
Mm. Now I know all three of us, we also balance the complexity of raising little boys, which is no feat, and then leaving a legacy and inspiring them. For me, that was a real key pivotal moment of life when I saw not only my first, but my second son come to this world and realizing, wow, like they look up to me and my actions, what I do is going to affect their trajectory in a meaningful manner. And that pressure at home 24/7 is obviously a privilege, but it's really real. How do you balance that dynamic plus running a business and giving back to the community at large, because there's only so much time in the day?
Yeah, for me, I'll jump on it first. And, since Tristan always wants to go first, I'm going to take this one. I realized, Kobie, really early on, I'm sure, Tristan, you saying, our kids spend more time away from us than with us. They spend more time with strangers than they do with us. And so when I'm with my son, I want to make sure I'm very intentional about being as present as possible when I'm there. Wherever my feet are with my son, I want to make sure I'm there with him and not distracted to a certain extent. And at the same time, I also have to make sure I'm working hard to put him in an environment that's helping to support him, not knowing that I'm not going to be there. So who am I bringing around him? Where am I putting him to be able to help shape that perspective, or maybe echo the values that I want to teach? Because sometimes it's not the message, it's the messenger. And so those are things that we're constantly working on, is trying to make sure we have the right people speaking into his life when it's not his mom and dad doing that. So easier said than done. There's a lot of things that you can't control in that situation, but we try hard to think about that as a guide.
Yeah. I mean, let me first start by saying how my two sons, I have one who's 7, one who's about to turn 3, have changed me. And then tell you a little bit about how kind of balance comes into that. So, having my sons have redefined ambition for me, right? Where formerly it was driven by an ego that I was unwilling to release. Now, as I think about, this balance thing, and I'll sound like a broken record, values, values, values. The wonderful thing about values, if you actually write them down to define them, it gives you a language, a shared language of engagement, right? So when you are out of line, folks know the language to use to let you know that you're out of line. So my now knowing who I am, and this was around the time that I had my first son, I wrote them down, I can fuel that ambition to build men of character with a precise language around what that means. Like for me, it's courage and inspiration and respect and judgment and wellness and loyalty, right? So whenever he does something or they do something, I can articulate the right behavior for that, and he'll be able to do that for me too. So I'm able to win balance back with that focus on values, because as I said earlier, you cut out a lot of junk out of your life. People, jobs, opportunities. And with that time that's won back, I can kind of funnel my ambition a little bit differently. So I'm balanced because of my value.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you said the way that you phrased that as well. And Kobie, I've asked this question to a lot of parents. What do you want for your child? What do you actually really want them to be when they grow up? And they always say, I want them to be happy, I want them to be joyful, and I want them to have good character. I want them to have good values. Very rarely have I ever heard a parent go, I want them to be billionaires. I want them to be CEOs. I want them to be elite athletes. I want them to do all these things that in their mind, as parents, you realize aren't important. It's the things that are important, are the values, the character, because we crave to be around individuals that have those values, that have that kindness, that have that courage. And so we want our children to grow up to be those individuals. And to me, that's something we don't talk a lot about in our community, and it's universal. I don't care who it is. All parents really do want that. And so what are we doing to lead with that and making sure we're ingraining those values in our homes and into our children? It's so important.
There's something really important, just if you don't mind, just piggybacking off that. I think we use the word values a lot. And people say that here are my values, but they don't really know what they are, right? And precise about it. I teach at a couple classes, and we talk about this thing of values. And I asked the folks in the room, and some of this stuff is at Stanford MBAs, folks who are going to, go on and be executives everywhere. I say, how many of you have actually written down your values? And I've done this for years, right? And I've only had 3 people raise their hands. How are we showing up in the world without knowing who we are? We're just making it up, right? And I refuse to waste time on that.
Yeah, I would say not only just making it up, but you're customizing your values to who you're in front of. to please usually that environment or that person or whatever that means. So
that's incredibly dangerous. Well, I could go on for hours talking with both of you, which we've done at other times anyway. But again, really appreciate you both taking the time, sharing your story, sharing your wisdom, sharing your perspective, and the legacies you guys are leaving for the community and for your children are really going to affect this world in a very positive, meaningful manner, and just feel blessed to call you both friends, and excited that I was able to share it with the full broader Valence community here. So thank you.
Thank you, brother.
Love you guys.
Good to see you guys.
Good to see you. Take care.